Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko 282D. This is what's called an elevator. Basically, this is a piece of extruded aluminum that's literally meant to help you mitigate a circumstance in a floor condition that there isn't a single extrusion that's available to solve the problem. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's take some basic dimensional properties. This item is 1 inch wide. It is an overall height of about 3/8. About. The important part is that it lifts your threshold a 1/4 inch. It's going to elevate the threshold a 1/4 inch. So, this is in the D finish, which is dark bronze. It's available in A for mill aluminum, black suede powder coat, an oil rubbed equivalent powder coat, a white suede powder coat as well. There may be other finishes that are more current that I'm not aware of, but this is an elevator and belongs in a family of other elevators that are different heights primarily and of course different widths. Let's talk about where you're going to use this. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Now, where are you going to use this? You're going to use this where you don't have the option to use a single extrusion to solve the problem. And where that comes into play is when you have existing conditions, is really what it is. So most recently where I sold a whole bushel load of elevators was a condo job in Fort Lauderdale, and 180 doors, 178, and all of the undercuts needed to vary because the flooring condition over the years and last 2 or 3 decades has changed. If you've got a building that's 30, 40, 50 years old, you can guarantee to have some original flooring, and you can have some second generation flooring and some third generation and some 5th generation flooring put over stuff. And you get to a point where, what are you going to do? Tear up the entire floor and redo it because you're putting in a new door? Probably not. So you've got this weird offset, like 1 5/8, something really nasty. And you want to transition, but your threshold that you're going to buy, that you're going to rip down, that will allow you to transition, stops short of where the floor is. Well, enter the elevator and then you get there, okay? Then you get there. Now, in applications like that, you've got to be careful because those doors need to be fire rated. And there are requirements, according to NFPA 80, about how wide the threshold has to be. You would probably want to discuss with the authority having jurisdiction, will an elevator, in addition to a threshold, be permissible and acceptable? You'd probably want to know that before going through that. It was discovered on that job in Fort Lauderdale that the width of the threshold did not meet the requirements as stated in NFPA 80, which basically say, don't quote me, but it's close to this. For jams that are 4 inch or less, the threshold needs to be in the entire width of the jam. But under no circumstances is the width of the threshold to be less than 4 inch. So if you've got a 5 inch, typical wall construction, you can't use a 3 inch threshold. It's got to be at least 4 inch. Well, these thresholds that the client elected were 3.5. Here I'm making you aware that this does not meet NFPA 80. Proceed accordingly as it best suits you, just to absolve us of making the client aware of that. So just transparency is what I'm driving at. If you're using an elevator in a weird application like a 30, 40-year-old building that needs to have fire-rated doors, is this going to fly? Can you use this? Because I'm not aware that this has ever been tested in a fire-rated application, and I'm going to pull the catalog up and I'm going to search for the 282. I'm going to see if it's acknowledged. Yeah, it's acknowledged as fire rated. Yep. UL, UL10C, UL10, UL10C. You're in good shape. I'm sure that's all the inspector would need to see in order to have, should that information be requested. So I personally wouldn't have concern over it. If someone had concern over it, then there you go. You might, because it is a listed product, it's approved for use, you could also consider having them welded, because then there's no concern over the fact that it's a loose piece that's not screwed down. The last thing you would want is that it fail, and now you've got potentially a clearance from the bottom of the door to the top of your sill that is no longer compatible. The code also, NFPA 80 also says that undercut can't exceed 3/4 inch. And that's where I get the majority of calls. I've got a 1-inch undercut. What can I do? Tell me about the cross-section of your sill condition. Well, yeah, that's the problem. Okay, so I start thinking, my second or third batter in my lineup is going to be an elevator when I'm talking to the client about how we're going to solve the problem. So that's what elevators really do. They solve problems. You wouldn't use this ever on its own. Maybe one time I can think of, a client bought this because it just solved his problem perfectly. There's a weird application where he's going to run his 1/8-inch adhesive tile that you see in bathrooms and gas stations right over that. He says, that's going to be perfect. I said, okay. 1/4-inch subfloor with a 1/8-inch tile that butted up to this. Great. I think that did happen maybe 10 years ago. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at all the supporting information. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, so here's the item that we are working on. A 282D. Let's take a look at the extended description. Designed to raise the height of a saddle threshold. Elevators can also be used to make a custom threshold for any offset application. I wouldn't say any, but certainly lots. And they didn't say any. Forgive me. Used to make a custom threshold for a specific offset. Elevators are secured by the weight of the saddle threshold they support, and they can be welded. I just had a conversation with a client last week regarding this exact sort of scenario. He had an unusual circumstance in a sill, step, stoop situation outside of a commercial business on a crowded street in Miami, and needed to lift one side of the threshold. And obviously the conversation went to elevators, and he asked, well, how is that screwed down? And I said, well, it's not. It's held down by the fasteners that hold the threshold in. And he said, well, that's not going to work because they're going to be taking carts, rolling carts over this. And I agreed that it's probably not going to work long term to have a 2-wheel hand cart with 150 pounds rolling directly over it. And I did tell him, listen, they can weld that. Get behind there. There's a charge for it. It's not insignificant. But Pemko can certainly weld all that together, so not a problem with that. And indeed, they can be welded upon request. Additional charges apply. Catalog page. This is going to show the other elevators that are in this family of items. Different heights, first of all. 1/4, 3/8, 1/2 inch. Different widths. The 282 is admittedly less common. When I sell an elevator, well, I've sold all of these. I think I sell these tiny ones more often than these wider units. That's just my experience. You don't sell elevators often to begin with, but if I was going to say, the 183, which can be put in 2 different orientations, is the one that we sell most of. Probably because it solves 2 different heights just by turning the extrusion over. But absolutely all of these we've sold. Okay. Now, let's see here now. There are some images of the item that I'd like to show you. That's a cross profile, cross section, I should say, showing the backside, showing the leading edge, just another view of it, and then the underside, the item turned over. Again, no screws, no fasteners will be included with this. You won't have any of that. In the instances when I have used a elevator, I've never had someone report back that it fell or slipped out. But I know that those were applications where it was supported from underneath the main threshold, and there was no rolling cart or no heavy traffic going over the opening. And in fact, it was probably rarely, if ever, made contact with. Okay. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page as seen here. When you click on that, you can pull up the manufacturer's page. From here, you can pull up not only all of the Pemko items that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as seen here, as well as the current product catalog. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that, you know, it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So in conclusion, not much else remaining to say about an elevator. The last thing I'd like to leave you with is when it comes to Pemko, you might want to take a look at their catalog in the sense that they have the largest, broadest available array of weather stripping products compared to other manufacturers. They have more choices than a couple, 3 of them combined. So if you have an unusual circumstance and you're looking for something unusual to begin with, start with their catalog. Good people over there, good quality product, economical product. And if you don't find exactly what you want, be mindful. Aluminum can be easily ripped. It can be easily welded. And while, again, that does drive up the cost, if you've got the parts that in your mind's eye you can put together, the threshold that you want can be realized. So keep that in mind. We don't do it often, but when we do have something custom made, it's for an application that really requires it. I had a 18-inch wide threshold, 3 of them or whatever it was for a job, 2 of them in Manhattan, because we had 14-inch deep frames, just giant frames, on 5th Avenue, just south of Central Park by about 5 blocks. A retail space that was there. These were service stores, and it just had to be the right way, and that's all there is to it. So be mindful. If your requirement is that it just has to be the right way, I got you covered. Any questions on the 282D or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.